A new plan to help debt-ridden Detroit is causing a lot of controversy. The New York Times is reporting that leaders in the city are looking to shift retirees too young to qualify for Medicare out of city-run health care plans and onto the new Obamacare health exchanges. And Detroit, not alone in this, other municipalities like Chicago and Stockton also contemplating dropping coverage. Here to discuss this, Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, I mean, can this happen?
Well, here's the basic primer on bankruptcy.
Yeah.
When the bankrupt files bankruptcy, we're not talking about a creditor forcing the bankrupt into bankruptcy. A Detroit case where they admit we can't pay our bills anymore. They place everything before a federal bankruptcy judge, all of their assets and all their obligations. The federal bankruptcy judge can change who owes what to whom. The bankruptcy judge can change any contractual obligation that Detroit has. But the bankruptcy judge cannot relieve Detroit of the obligation to obey the law. And one of the laws that Detroit has to obey, which it once liked but now no longer likes, is Obamacare, which requires a certain minimum level of health care provided to its employees. So even bankruptcy, I would argue, and I'll tell you why I'm saying I would argue in a moment, is not the route out of Obamacare for Detroit. The reason I say I would argue is because the statute is silent on municipalities going bankrupt. This is not something that was contemplated, even though the statute is only 2 years old. So this is new territory for this federal judge. To make this even more complicated, Michigan's Republican Governor Snyder rejected the exchanges. So there's no local Michigan exchange. The feds under the statute are required to come in and operate an exchange in Michigan. Translate, federal taxpayers will be paying some of the cost of providing health care coverage to these recent Detroit retirees retiring on what they thought was a rich pension, too young to qualify for Medicare.
Federal taxpayers, because their state can't tax anymore. There are no residents to tax. So you're saying
Well, you're talking about the city now. There are no residents who earn enough, very few. They earn enough money to tax. So Michigan could, but Michigan opted out of it. So Michigan's not running that exchange.
So who
that
are these taxpayers?
Us and the people watching us. The Michigan exchange will be paid for by the federal government. Now, remember, when the court reviewed Obamacare and said the individual mandate is constitutional, it did strike down a portion.
Yes.
That was the portion of the statute that forced the states to run the exchanges. The Supreme Court said this is optional. You can't tell the states how to spend their own money. You want to provide health care in Michigan or New Jersey, federal government, you pay for it. So the feds are paying for it, which is basically
we're
us
paying for it.
It's backfired so many different ways, this Obamacare.
It has, but you know, this is a real liberal democratic constituency in this community now saying we don't want to live by and under a statute that 2 and 3 years ago we were championing.
Yeah, and do you expect this to be played out again elsewhere across the country?
Well, yes,
is this the test case?
I didn't know about yes, this is the test case. I didn't know about Stockton, but Stockton will try and do the same. Will try and do the same thing. The bankruptcy judges will have to change the law. The law, as of this moment, is they cannot relieve the bankrupt of the obligation to obey a statute directed at the bankrupt. They can only relieve the bankrupt of the obligation to comply with contracts into which the bankrupt entered before the time of the bankruptcy. Like a pension agreement, a rich, luxurious pension agreement, a pension agreement so good that you would retire before you're 62 when Medicare kicks in.
Wow. I mean, but the good news, I guess, for those people is they're still going to have health care.
One way or another, they will. And it will be the minimum level that the federal government now requires.
Craziness.
Judge, thank you so much.
Pleasure, guys.
Appreciate it.